I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the badge. Not because it looked official, but because it didn't feel right. It happened early in the morning. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. No notices. No emails. No warnings from the HOA. Just a normal day starting like any other. Until there was a knock on my door. Not aggressive. Not urgent. But controlled. The kind of knock that tries to sound official. When I opened the door, two men were standing there, both dressed in dark uniforms. Not exactly police, but close enough to make someone hesitate. One of them had a badge clipped to his chest. The other was holding a folder. And right away, something felt off. Property compliance enforcement, one of them said. Calm. Confident. Like he had said it many times before. I didn't respond immediately. I just looked at them for a second longer than normal. Because in that moment, I wasn't listening to what they were saying. I was studying it. The uniform. The badge. The tone. Everything looked designed to convince. Not to prove. They told me there had been a violation reported regarding my property. Something about unauthorized modifications and non-compliance with community regulations. Standard HOA language, but delivered in a way that sounded like actual law enforcement. That was the first red flag. Because HOAs don't send people like that. They send letters. Emails. Not uniforms. Not badges. And definitely not people knocking on your door like that. But I didn't argue. I didn't question them. Instead, I stepped aside slightly and let them talk. Because sometimes, the fastest way to understand something fake is to let it continue. They started pointing things out around my property. Small things. Normal things. Things that had never been an issue before. But the way they described them made it sound serious. Almost legal. Almost criminal. And that was the point. They weren't trying to inform me. They were trying to pressure me. One of them handed me a paper. Not a real citation, but something designed to look like one. Official-looking layout. Stamped. Structured. But when I looked closer, it didn't belong to any actual department. No verified seal. No proper identification. Just something made to look convincing. I took it anyway. Calm. Quiet. Because at that point, I already knew. This wasn't enforcement. This was intimidation. Before they left, one of them said something that made everything even clearer. If this isn't resolved quickly, further action will be taken. Not may. Not could. Will. That kind of certainty doesn't come from real authority. It comes from people pretending to have it. I watched them walk back to their vehicle. A plain car. No markings. No official signs. Nothing that connected them to any real agency. And that confirmed it. Completely. The moment they drove away, I didn't call anyone. I didn't report it. Because now, I had something much more valuable. A starting point. I went back inside, placed the paper on the table, and looked at it carefully again. Every detail. Every word. Every mistake. Because fake authority always leaves traces. You just have to know where to look. Later that day, I stepped outside again. Not to check my property, but to check the neighborhood. And it didn't take long to notice something interesting. I wasn't the only one. A few houses down, I saw the same paper in someone else's hand. Same confusion. Same concern. Same pressure. Which meant one thing. This wasn't random. This was organized. And behind something organized like this, there's always someone pulling the strings. I walked back home slowly, already thinking ahead. Because now the situation wasn't just about me. It was bigger. Someone was using fear to control the neighborhood. And they thought no one would question it. They thought no one would look deeper. They thought the uniform was enough. But what they didn't realize was, they had just made a mistake. A big one. Because they didn't come to the wrong house. They came to the worst possible one. And I wasn't going to stop them. Not yet. Because the more they continued, the more they exposed. And when the truth finally came out, It wasn't going to be a warning. It was going to end everything. I didn't confront them. I didn't warn anyone. Because at that point, I needed to understand how deep this actually went.
You need to
For the
comply
next
right
2
now,
days,
ma'am.
I paid
We have
attention to
multiple
everything.
reports.
But I haven't done anything
Not just my house,
wrong.
but the entire neighborhood. Who they
Step back
visited,
inside now.
when they showed up, how people reacted. And the pattern became clear very quickly. They weren't targeting everyone. Just specific houses. Houses that were quiet. Houses that wouldn't question authority. Houses that would comply without asking too many questions. That wasn't random. That was strategy. I started noticing small details. The same car appearing at different times of the day. The same 2 officers walking up to doors with that same controlled knock. The same papers being handed out. Everything repeated. Everything calculated. So instead of stepping in, I started documenting. From a distance. Every visit. Every movement. Every conversation I could catch on camera. Because the more I watched, the more obvious it became. These weren't officials. They were actors. Not professional ones. But good enough to fool someone who wasn't paying attention. On the 3rd day, I decided to get closer. Not directly. Just enough to hear. They were at a house 2 doors down. I stayed out of sight, but close enough to catch parts of the conversation. The same script. The same tone. The same pressure. But this time, I heard something different. A name. Not a department. Not an agency. A person. And that changed everything. Because fake operations don't run themselves. Someone was behind this. Someone inside the neighborhood. Later that evening, I reviewed the footage again. Slowed it down. Focused on details I had ignored before. And then I saw it. On the paper they handed out. A logo. Small. Almost unnoticeable. But it wasn't government. It was HOA. Modified. Adjusted just enough to look official. But not enough to be real. That's when everything clicked. This wasn't just intimidation. This was impersonation. And not just random impersonation. Organized impersonation. I went back to the notice they gave me. This time, I looked deeper. The wording. The formatting. The signatures. And that's when I found the biggest mistake they made. There was no legal backing. No registration. No enforcement code. Nothing that connected it to any real authority. Which meant one thing. Everything they were doing was illegal. I didn't react. I didn't expose them. Because now, I had something much stronger than suspicion. I had proof. But I still wasn't done. Because I needed one more thing. I needed to know who gave the order. The next morning, I took a walk through the neighborhood again. Slower this time. Watching people. Listening to conversations. And that's when I heard it. 2 residents talking quietly near the sidewalk. They said the HOA is enforcing it now. They sent people, like officers. That confirmed it. This wasn't just a small operation. This was being presented as official HOA action. Which meant whoever was behind it was either inside the board or pretending to be. And both options were bad. Very bad. I walked back home, already planning my next move. Because now the situation had changed. This wasn't just about fake uniforms anymore. This was about authority, control, and deception at a level that could destroy everything if exposed the right way. I placed all the footage, all the papers, everything I had collected, on the table. And looked at it one more time. They thought the uniform was enough. They thought fear would keep people quiet. They thought no one would question it. But they forgot one thing. The more they continued, the more they revealed. And now, I was close. Very close. To finding out exactly who started all of this. And when I did, it wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be the end of it. I didn't wait anymore. Because at that point, I had everything I needed. Not assumptions. Not guesses. Proof. Clear. Detailed. undeniable. But even then, I didn't rush to expose them publicly. I didn't go door to door. I didn't post anything online. Because this wasn't the kind of situation you handle with noise. This needed precision. So the next morning, I made one move. Quiet. Direct. Official. I took everything I had, the footage, the fake notices, the badge details, the timeline of their visits, and placed it exactly where it couldn't be ignored. Real authorities. Not HOA. Not neighborhood boards. Actual enforcement. And once it was there, everything started moving faster than I expected. That same afternoon, something changed in the neighborhood. The car came back. The same one. The same 2 fake officers. But this time, they weren't in control. Because they weren't the only ones there anymore. Another vehicle pulled up behind them. Marked. Official. And the moment those doors opened, you could feel it. The shift. No more confidence. No more scripted tone. No more control. The same men who had been knocking on doors with authority were now standing still, trying to explain something that didn't make sense anymore. I watched from a distance. Calm. Silent. As everything unfolded exactly the way it had to. The real officers didn't rush. They didn't argue. They just asked questions. Simple ones. Direct ones. Identification. Authorization. Affiliation. And that's where it broke. Because fake authority works until it's tested. And the moment they were asked to prove it, they couldn't. No real badges. No official department. No legal backing. Nothing. Just uniforms, and a lie. Within minutes, the entire situation flipped. The same people who had been pressuring homeowners were now being questioned themselves. Papers taken. Details recorded. Everything documented. And for the first time, they didn't have control over anything. But the biggest moment wasn't that. It was what came next. One of the real officers walked toward the HOA office area. Because this didn't stop with them. It couldn't. Operations like this don't start at the bottom. They start somewhere higher. And whatever they found there changed everything. Because by the evening, the news had spread across the neighborhood. Not rumors. Not guesses. Facts. The HOA wasn't just involved. They were responsible. Directly or indirectly, they had allowed it. Approved it. Or failed to stop it. And in situations like this, that's enough. Complaints started turning into reports. Reports turned into action. And action turned into consequences. The same HOA that tried to control everything through fear was now dealing with something they couldn't control at all. Investigation. Authority. Accountability. I stepped outside one last time that night, looking at the same street where it all started. Quiet again. But different. Because now, people understood. It wasn't enforcement. It wasn't law. It was manipulation. And it failed. They thought a uniform was enough. They thought no one would question it. They thought fear would keep everything in place. But they made one mistake. They tried it on someone who was paying attention. And that was all it took. Because in the end, they didn't lose control because they were caught. They lost it. The moment they pretended to have power they never actually had.